The economy is not working for people, and I think it's fundamentally a problem of macroeconomic. Every country in the world feels this way at the moment. 80% of the money supply in the US has been printed since 2020. When you printed all this money, each dollar, each pound is worth less. Asset prices have increased dramatically. So if you were, let's say, when my father bought his first home in, say, 1970, probably the price of a house in the UK was maybe 2 times the price of an average gross salary, whereas now it's 10 times.
The system doesn't care about people and doesn't care about nature either. Money is meaningless. Until we resolve and give money a purpose, we haven't got a hope, but there are better solutions which involve revisiting and redesigning the monetary system.
The Manna journey is the catalyst for change in our world. It's a consistent source of truth for the next generation and current leaders. Our mission is to change the world by reframing our current governance, by using ancient wisdom to solve modern problems, and by shaping innovative new businesses to have a culture of pursuit of purpose.
Have you ever wondered why the economy is not working for ordinary people? Why every year people seem to get poorer and the prices in the shops seem to go up? Businesses don't really give people what they need for a happy and fulfilling life. Well, that's a question we're going to be asking ourselves on the Manna journey today with Phillip Ullmann and, of course, our special guest, Andrew Chalmers, who is the go-to guy for some of the richest and most powerful people on earth. Andrew, let's just start by saying, what is going wrong with our economy?
Thanks, Andre. I think the problem is, at least in the West, and it's a global problem, we were talking about it, is every country in the world feels this way at the moment, is the economy is not working for people. And I think it's fundamentally a problem of macroeconomics. So, particularly in the West, we have printed so much money that the value of the more of you have of something, the less each one has value. And so when we've printed so much money, something like 80% of the money supply in the US has been printed since 2020, which is, of course, a result of COVID. And so they decided to cure the economy, we're going to print more and more money. And when the West moved away from the gold standard, and currency used to be linked to physical gold, eventually Nixon got rid of the gold standard, and he said, well, you know what? They spent too much money. They had that problem back in the 70s, was they printed too much money they had wars, they had economic problems. They decided the cure was to print money. And so by doing that, they started getting detached from the gold standard until other countries started saying, hey, wait a minute, all that gold that you took of mine to replace for US dollars, because I loved your US dollars because it was gold backed. Now I don't have my gold, and I've got these US dollars, but now you're printing all this money. Can I have my gold back, please? And the US said, well, a little problem is we may have a little more dollars than we have gold. So then they said, actually, here's the thing, we're not going to give you your gold back, but you can stay on the US dollar because it's a great currency, and we got this large economy, and everyone's on it, so everyone's trading on it already. It's a pretty useful currency. And so fast forward, since we've moved away from let's say a commodity-backed currency or gold-backed currency, then suddenly I think, the economy started saying, well, wait a minute, if we just print more money, we can solve our short-term problems. So 2008 was the first real big printing. And, the financial crisis and the banks crisis. So they said, well, if we just print a lot more money, this will keep the economy flowing, and the money supply flowing around. So then, of course, COVID strikes, and they say, wait, hey, we did this in 2008. It was great. We kind of avoided a catastrophe. Let's do it again. Let's print even more money this time. So instead of hundreds of billions, it was now trillions. And so they printed all this money, particularly during COVID. And now when you printed all this money, each dollar, each pound is worth less. And so if you take this point of why does everyone feel poorer? And everyone, you can't just have a normal job and have a good life anymore. And so why has everyone got 2-3 jobs? And then why is there a mental health crisis? And you think, people saying, oh, we have to communicate more. Say, yeah, but that's fine, but if you've got 2 or 3 jobs and you're hustling and you're trying to come back and start a family and you can't afford a home and you can't even afford to have children anymore, then of course you have a mental health crisis because people are struggling and they're battling. And so, really it goes down to that fundamental problem that too much money.
This question. Why don't people realize that very simple proposition that you've put forward, that as you print money, as money is devalued, as it becomes all about, financial tricks and banking chicanery, that has a real impact on real people.
I think because, I mean, you could look at it from a sinister perspective, because the people that are printing the money, what happens is your value of each pound or dollar in your pocket is worth less, but asset prices increase. So the people who are in charge ultimately of printing the money, when you print all this extra money, that money flows into the economy, but it flows into assets. And so the asset prices have increased dramatically. So if you were, let's say, when my father bought his first home in, say, 1970, probably the price of a house in the UK was maybe 2 times the price of an average gross salary, whereas now it's 10 times. So it's 5 times more effort that someone has to do today to own a house. And so that's where they're feeling that strain. So why do governments do it? Well, in the short term, it fixes their problem. You don't have an uprising of the people because there's more money. Say, hey, in the US, they started physically writing checks to individuals and saying, here's $2,000 during COVID. They say, hey, well, that's great. But actually, all that happens is that money flows into asset prices. So house prices have gone up. The stock market has gone up. And so the wealthy get wealthier, including by and large politicians or asset holders. So asset prices have gone up, the wealthy are wealthier, but people who don't have assets.
But that's not, there's 2 problems, isn't there? I'll come on to Phillip in a second. There's 2 problems. Number one, it makes it harder for people to get houses. I was watching an episode of Panorama from the 1960s where they were saying that people were spending 1/5 of their income on property, which of course is much lower than today. But you've got that issue, but also you've got the issue that people are moving away from real economics. I watch TV programs all the time where every single show is about making money in the property market. And there's no popular television shows about making money in manufacturing.
That's true. And that's because the asset prices of property have increased. The asset prices, if you go into social media, it's all around how to trade your way into a fortune, be it crypto or the NASDAQ or AI stocks and all of this, right? But the problem is, it's people say, oh, how to retire is, if you have 4 million and you're getting 8% on the NASDAQ, you're fine. So yeah, but you need 4 million. And so, the vast majority of people don't have assets. And so people say, and that trickle down effect is not happening from the real economy. And so that capital is just flooding into assets. And there's a very well-known macroeconomist, he's an analyst called Raoul Pal. And what he did is he took the NASDAQ, and instead of, NASDAQ is obviously priced in US dollar terms, and he rebased the NASDAQ in amount of money printed terms. And then if you look at that over the last 20 years, it's flat. And that it's not skyrocketing as it looks like on the chart, it's actually flat, which means that despite the NASDAQ having increased dramatically, you're not really better off, you're just neutral. And so, of course, the vast majority of people don't have large shareholdings in the NASDAQ, and so their value of their dollar and pound has decreased dramatically.
Philip, the economy is failing to deliver for real people. We sit there, we talk about these assets all the time, but the people that I know, the people that I meet, are getting poorer every single year.
Absolutely right. The system doesn't care about people and doesn't care about nature either. The 2 key things, people and planet, are not part of the system.
Why not?
Because, as Andrew said, there's no hook into people. It's money, which is meaningless. There was a hook into gold. Now, that wasn't ideal because gold is a commodity. But there's now a hook into nothing, which means money is meaningless. It's just a number which is loaned into existence by the banks, who are private organizations interested in lining their own pockets. And they don't want to take risks. They lend when there are assets involved, which pumps up asset prices, whether it's real estate or companies or consumer prices. And that is inflation, and that is theft. That's stealing from the poor people and giving it to wealthy people.
You've made this point before. It's not just government printing money, is it? It's banks printing money as well.
It's almost all banks lending the money into existence. The government prints a very small amount. COVID accepted, it's normally 3%, 97% is lent into existence. And that's lacking any meaning or purpose. And therefore, we've created a world where those that have get more and more, and those that haven't get less and less. And that's why we're seeing social unrest, we're seeing massive polarization in America, here all over the world. Until we resolve and give money a purpose, we haven't got a hope.
But if I am brought up and I'm conditioned, I'll put this to both of you, I'm conditioned to want to make a profit, to be obsessed, to say that the only thing that's important in life is a bigger car, a bigger house, more profit, and the profit is all in banking, and the profit is all in property, and the profit is all in real estate, then I'm not going to go back to manufacturing wire in Watford, am I? What I'm going to do is just buy houses and trade up.
Well, the person who is putting food on the table, working in a warehouse, is not represented anywhere in the system, nor is nature, nor is the environment. So fundamentally, there's no voice for people, there's no voice for nature, and therefore they get crushed by the system. And as long as we leave it that way, we're stuffed. There's no hope. But there are better solutions which involve revisiting and redesigning the monetary system.